Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a top 6 breakdown for the 3-on-3 Cup that was happening concurrently with the regionals in Los Angeles this past weekend. So both of them were going on at the same time. We already did the coverage of the regional itself, and we did the live stream of the regional. We couldn't unfortunately do both at the same time, but honestly, a really great event, a really stacked event, since I think a lot of people who would be going into the regional decided to play in this one, not only because they have their invite, but because the prizing was a little bit better for this one, since I believe it's like the last time that we have Serial Luffy as a prize card, not only in North America, but like maybe the world. So I know a lot of people are kind of trying, their last chance to get one of those guys. So, and because of that too, because a lot of people who already had their invites went into this event, it means that this event was stacked with people who, have already proven that they're good at, top 16ing a big event. So, a very, very stacked tournament, I would say as well. And honestly, like I don't, when I originally kind of thought of the 3-on-3 Cup, I thought it was kind of a side format, but I think there is a lot of ways to take this very seriously. I think a lot of the competitors definitely did, and I honestly really do like the idea, the more and more that I see of it, which is really, really cool. Just being able to have a team of players, which we don't usually get in card games often, but then also being able to kind of figure out the strategies, what the counters are, where do you think your opponent's going to put, X leader a lot of the times, and I think that's really, really cool. So really happy to go over these leaders and these lists for you guys. And if you guys kind of don't know the format for it, you and 2 buddies choose 3 different leaders to represent your team, and then after that, the deck building, there's no restrictions. You can play 4 of each card in each one of your decks if you guys want to, besides the regular deck restriction construction stuff. But and that's kind of just it. You just build your team and you just kind of go from there. So the pie chart might look a little bit deceptive. It means that every one of our top 6 teams did play Sakazuki, which isn't super surprising. I would kind of expect that for this event, and how it is. It's just a very consistent, strong deck, and it's definitely always, I think, in like best 3 in this format discussion. So I think that's super crazy for that there. I also do want to say it was 142 teams and 6 rounds of Swiss, and we do have a top 6 breakdown just because that's how the prizing kind of moves out. Since there's like a weird amount of people, like the prizing and is a little bit different than kind of traditional formats too. So, but I do think it's cool. We have 6 Sakazukis, 4 of the purple Luffys, 3 yellow Enel, 2 of the OP01 Trafalgar Law, which we haven't really seen a lot in this format, Nami, a Zoro, and then also a Star Deck 10 Luffy. So we're going to go over both of all of the lists from the top 2, especially since those guys not only both got a serial Luffy, but they did have 5 different leaders across the 6 different players, which is really cool. And we're going to go over the kind of the individual leaders after that. So we're going to go into our first place team. So this is Adam's list for Nami here. And we haven't seen Nami in a little bit. I don't think it was doing quite so good in 4.0, or at least 4.5 as well. And it's coming back maybe a little bit. I feel like this is like the build that we see more times than not for this one. There are a couple tweaks that mostly just the add of the Nojiko. This is a little bit of a slow card. It has the on play if your leader's Nami. You can return up to one of your opponent's characters' cost of 5 or less to their hand, which is great tempo for you. You use 2 to get rid of a 4, kind of even just temporarily. So being able to do that, I think, in this leader is great. I don't think as many decks are just kind of putting out like a wide board, so this can answer some of those kind of tricky cards. Very like if they spent all their entire turn playing a 5-drop, you play Nojiko, you get the 5-drop back in their hand and prevents like another attack coming in, which is really good. So I think that's a strong pick for it. Other than that, it's kind of what we've been seeing, like the Impel Down. We just have our good events cards. We just play Impel Down All Stars just for the trigger effect and the fact we can find it with Buggy, in case you're curious why that's in there. But other than that, just kind of what we've been seeing for Nami builds in the last couple of weeks. So not much more to say, but congratulations to Adam for their finish there. And then next we have, I'm just going to go over both Sakazuki lists at the same time. So we have Dylan's list here from the first place team, as well as Henry's list here for the second place team. And honestly, just very similar, which shouldn't be too surprising. I think there's like most of the cards for this, I think like maybe 40, the same for most Sakazukis. The core is pretty understood at this point. We play our Rebecca's because this card is super good. It lets us recycle like most of our deck, as well as develop a blocker, and it's just very good in a lot of ways. We play Rob Lucci because in kind of the same way. The top end and kind of the events are kind of the different ads for it. So for this one, we have 3 copies of Borsalino and then 2 copies of Kaido, which I wasn't originally on Kaido personally, but more and more people are talking about, and sometimes it's just like, you know what, a lot of decks are kind of try to starve you of resources. This will just win you the game if you're able to see it, which I think is very strong. So you don't really have a way to search it, and there's just a lot of ways that this could end up in your trash, but other than that, I think it's a solid card. So I do like the add of that there too. We also have over here in Dylan's version the Soga King, just a one of, but it is like a nice. I would not expect this card. It's good for not only like returning cards, like it gets rid of a 7 or less if we use our leader effect, and it does get some cycle, which sometimes we do kind of value that. There are some clunky hands. Our leader does fix it a little bit, but that is important. We also have like the Toshigi too, so it's kind of like another copy of Hina, but it doesn't have counter, so like that extra cycle I think is important. And I do really like the Marine Ford, which I run like 1 or 2 copies out right now. It's just like an additional way to help get things in a range, which I think is strong. And being able to double your leader effect to give -2 to anything without spending any Dawn, I think is a great effect. So both players are playing 1 copy of it, and I do like adding 1 or 2 copies. It does come up, and again, if it we don't have time to play it, our leader is very good at discarding it too. So congratulations to both Dylan and Henry for their 1st and 2nd place finishes respectively. And then next up we have Trafalgar Law. So this is Nikki's version of it, and I haven't seen Law in a minute, and honestly I think it does do very bad into the Sakazukis that exist. And if I'm able to offer my own insight, I'm sure Nikki has the better answer for it. But in this format, you can guarantee that the most that you're going to see the Sakazuki is 33%, right? Like the majority of your matches will not be Sakazuki, because that statistically, right? Like there's only one, right? So one of your players will play it, but chances are it's not you, if that kind of makes sense. And then if you also have like the additional read of where you think that people will be playing the Sakazuki in the middle or one of the wings, you can kind of double up your chances on that too. So I think that's something that's something you can do specifically on like the 3v3 or 3-on-3 cup compared to I would say the regular format, where it would be very, very hard for Law to dodge the Sakazuki all day. And when you do see the Sakazuki, that means you get the hard matchup, but then the other 2 players can kind of cover for you too. So that's my insight. I'm not sure if that's true, but that's just kind of my play style and thought seeing this list and kind of everything else. Other than that, it's just normal for what we've been seeing. The new ad is the Dogora. So activate main, you can rest this character, play up to 1 red character other than Dogora with a cost of 1 from your hand. So we didn't see this often. Sometimes I'd see it as a tech, but being able to play a 1-drop red card, which means we get a wider board quicker, is very good, especially with the new ad of also Nico Robin, which shows up every once in a while. It's a little bit tricky to get things into that 1K or less range, but it does show up, and especially with Rebecca running around a lot, this is a really good card to get rid of that Rebecca, and I think that's important there too. So other than that, it's just what we've been seeing. No events, even though we can play Rad Beam at 4 right now. We're just playing none of them, and just having a lot of our character cards, which again, like I think there's a lot of removal, so being able to potentially try to get 5 out again as often as possible, I think makes sense. So this is a list for Nikki. Congratulations for their finish there. And then next up, we're going into our 2nd place team. So this is Kyle's version of Enel, and Enel ended up winning the regionals going on concurrently for this one. And honestly, like Enel's doing, I think very good, at least in this first weekend for North America. There was another event going on in Europe. There are actually 2 other ones, which we'll cover later this week, but there weren't any Enel in their top 16, at least for the Paris one, which is really interesting to see the contrast between the 2 regions for it. But I do think this is a leader that was probably going to do very well at the beginning of this format, and then kind of slope down a little bit when people kind of figure out how to play against it and stuff. The biggest thing is that if they have 1 life, they haven't used their leader effect, and you don't think you can put them down to 0, just don't attack them. They get that free cycle. They have more chances to hit Thunderbolts or hit Shirahoshis or just everything else. It's just not really worth it for it there. But then other than that, it's just kind of what we've been kind of seeing the top end. Yamato is definitely like the best card for this deck for the top end, since it does, you're at 1 so often. So being able to use this to, heal and potentially get rid of stuff, especially if you starve your opponent of resources, which you probably should early game. Because if you're able to go first, you can use this Gadatsu to get rid of a 5 or 4 cost card very easily. And you really don't need to press as much value, because you do kind of outvalue a lot of opponents and kind of get into like that late game a lot. And then we are running the Sky Island build too. I think like there's Sky Island and Big Mom that a lot of people are trying. I was a Big Mom fan for this build, but more and more people were playing the Sky Island and doing well with it this weekend, so they might have converted me a little bit on that one. But other than that, just what we've been seeing, I think it's a strong deck. It's going to be well. Again, I think people are going to kind of figure out how this deck works a little bit more and maybe not play into the outs as much, but other than that, I think it's a very strong deck. So this list for Kyle, congratulations for their finish there. And then next up, we have Brian with their purple Luffy. So this is the last of our second place list here, this is our last of our second place team. And Luffy did end up getting a third for our regionals and was in the finals, so just got bumped down that one spot. But this is a really good deck. I think it's very strong. And honestly, like this might be shocking for people, but just one copy of Useless Captain Kid. This card hasn't been doing as well as I thought it would be doing. Obviously, the 5-drop Useless Captain Kid, this card is fantastic. This gets so much value for you, and it's just really helpful in a lot of situations. I think it's just like a little bit more important. Like obviously, like using Useless Captain Kid and then playing Queen, and then you get the Dawn back and you can have it open. I think that's a good combo, but as much as this is like a nice like top end, your opponent usually has a really good way to remove this, especially if it's Sakazuki, and it just doesn't usually survive as often, which I find is a big kind of hit for this card. But so I'm just saying, like I understand just playing a couple copies. I don't think it's a 4 for this deck in this meta right now, and I think that's kind of a good insight from Brian for this one. I do like the Kaido though, man. If you play this on curve, and by curve I mean like 2 turns early because you're Luffy, this gets so much value, especially if you play it and you already have like the 5-drop Useless Kid. You get to pressure something, get to pop something. Your opponent's probably only at like 7 Dawn already, so you can use it to get rid of something they played, attack, get a 10k pressure, and they're going to have a hard time getting rid of this for the rest of the game. So I do think like doubling up and playing 4 copies of the Kaido is probably where I'd be leaning towards right now. So other than that, I think this deck is very strong. I know Sheephorn is another little tech card there. Polly's great. Magellan's great, especially if you go first and you're able to drop down to back-to-back, or sorry, second and go back-to-back. There's a lot of decks that just really can't handle like being off their curve that often. It's very strong. So that's kind of there. Congratulations to Brian for their finish there. And then next up we have Zoro. So it's a little bit of an interesting ad. We don't see as much Zoro, I think, right now, and I think a lot of people are saying, oh, if you're playing against Sakazuki, like they can get a lot of removal, like the Rob Lucci gets so much free value from that, and I think that is true. But I also will say that like I think Sakazuki is a little bit vulnerable to a lot of pressure, and we are playing a lot of rush cards, including 4 of these Zoros and 3 copies of these the Luffy, and then the 2 Jambes, which we can use on our leader very successfully. So being able to get around the blockers, because that's usually kind of Sakazuki's end game. You kind of get like some Rebecca loops and kind of get there, so which means you can get rid of not only the Rebecca with using cards like our Fire Fist, but also being able to get this so much rush and stuff there too. So I think that's a strong idea. I think a lot of people aren't expecting like these low to the ground rush decks, and if they aren't really teched or experienced against it, you get some free wins there too. So not much more to say. Congratulations to Steven for their finish there. And the last deck we're going to talk about today is going to be Calvin's Star Deck 10 Luffy, which I didn't like this deck at first, but it's been growing on me. I think there's a lot of like cool combos with this one. I would honestly say this is more of like a combo deck with what you can get the end game to be. Specifically, the combo that has been really popular is we have their 10-drop Luffy, which we can use. And obviously, I think this guy is better in red-purple Luffy compared to the purple Luffy. But being able to use this effect, you get 1 Dawn back with their leader effect, then use the activate main to get 1 back. Take another turn, and then we're able to, if we have a copy of our Jambe, we now have like a 13k. Like this can be just unblockable, right? Or if your opponent's just trying to, think they can use blockers to set up and stay alive, like being able to get that extra turn with the Luffy, I think is very strong in its own way too. So just really good stuff for it. You get a lot of good value, and being a 6k leader in this meta still does get a lot of free benefits, especially since Newgate's not around as much. I think people are not valuing 6k bodies as much if they don't need to, and you get some free like defense because of that too. So other than that, I think the deck is strong. I think Kid is better in this one because it does make you 7k, and you get to cheat up to this a little bit easier with being able to get our ramp cards, including the Zoro, the Basil Hawkins, and the Jean Bart too. So that's pretty much it. I think this deck can be very, very strong, and congratulations to Calvin for their finish there. But that's going to be it for this breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're going to have a good amount of OP05 content left before we have our finals next month as well, and I'm going to continue to kind of cover as much events as I can and get ready for that event too. So that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you all next time.